أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. Inshallah, after the dua, the tafseer of Surah Ikhlas will be taking place, so all the brothers are requested that please do take out some time and participate. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillah. برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله وحده والصلاة والسلام على من لا نبي بعده أما بعد قال الله تعالى قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. So today we are going to start the Tafseer of Surah Ikhlas. Now before we start, it is important that we understand a few virtues of this surah. So with regards to this surah, it comes in a narration that Nabi Akram sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he had once sent an army. Now when this army had dispatched and they were gone to wherever they had to go, there was an amir, there was a leader, that whenever he used to lead namaz, whenever he used to pray namaz, in the very first rak'at he would pray Surah Al-Fatiha, and in the first rakat, he'd pray Surah Al-Fatiha and Surah Ikhlas. In the second rakat again, he'd pray Surah Al-Fatiha and Surah Ikhlas. And whenever he would lead namaz, whenever he would pray namaz, whether that's sunnah, whether that's farz, whatever it was, he would pray Surah Fatiha and Surah Ikhlas. Now the Sahaba radiyallahu ta'ala anhum that were with this person, they were a bit confused, that why doesn't he pray the other surahs of the Quran? So after they came back, they approached Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and they told Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam that this person, whenever he leads namaz, he prays Surah Fatiha and Surah Ikhlas and nothing else, in the first rakat, in the second rakat, or whatever it is. So Nabi Akram sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he asked him why. Now this is also our ma'mul. Whenever you ask someone that what surah did you pray in your namaz, he will say, I prayed Surah Ikhlas, I prayed Qul Huwallahu Ahad, or I prayed Surah Kawthar, Inna A'tainaka Kawthar. Now the reason why this person used to pray Surah Ikhlas was completely different to our reason. Our reason is why? Because of ease. We pray Surah Qul Huwallahu Ahad, Allahu Samad, because it is very, very easy. Now this person, he said, the reason why I pray Surah Ikhlas in my namaz is because I have great love for Surah Ikhlas. Because in Surah Ikhlas, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He mentions His attributes. So for this reason, I love Surah Ikhlas, and in my namaz, I only pray Surah Ikhlas. So what did Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam say with his blessed mouth? He says that because you love Surah Ikhlas, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also loves you. What a great fadilah and what a great virtue. You love Surah Ikhlas, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will love you. And the reason why we are doing tafsir of Surah Al-Falaq, Surah Al-Nas, Surah Ikhlas, because we normally tend to pray these surahs in our namaz. We pray this surah, but we do not understand what we are actually praying. We do not understand the tafsir behind these verses. This is why we have gathered, and we now need to understand, we now need to learn what is the meaning behind this surah. It comes in another narration that a person, he came to complain to Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam with regards to his neighbor. And he says to Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam that the whole night this person, my neighbor, he spent praying Surah Ikhlas. Perpetually, continuously, all he's praying is Surah Ikhlas. Now the reason why this person was saying this is because he's trying to say to Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam that he could have prayed Surah Al-Baqarah, Surah Al-Imran, Surah Al-Nisa, Surah Ma'idah, whatever. He could have prayed any other surah of the Quran, but this person continuously, he's only praying Surah Ikhlas. So Nabi Akram sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he kind of realized that this person, كأنها يتقال لها, it is as if this person doesn't fully understand the virtue and the fada'il of Surah Ikhlas. So Nabi Akram sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he says to this particular individual that إِنَّهَا تَعْدِلُ ثُلُثُ الْقُرْآنِ, that this Surah Ikhlas, it is equivalent to 1/3 of the Quran. So never belittle Surah Ikhlas. It is a great surah of the Quran. It is equivalent to 1/3 of the Quran when it comes to its barakat and whatever else. Now one habit that I would like to speak about, one habit that is gone away from our mu'ashara, our society, and something that the old generation really had. That was whenever somebody passes away, they would send ithali thawab for that person. They would read 3 quls. Read 3 quls and send it to the marhum, to the person who has passed away. And this is a habit which is gone out of our life. A story that comes to mind, I think I read it in Ma'riful Quran, that a buzrug, he was going past a qabristan. And whilst he was walking past this qabristan, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala opened before him the halat and the condition of those people who are in the qabristan, who are buried in the qabristan. So now he can see everything. So he saw so many people, they are picking stuff up from the floor. And he saw one other person that he's just sat on the chair, he's doing absolutely nothing. He's just laid back, he's sitting on the chair, looking at every other person. So he approaches that man, that Buzruk, and he says that, what are these people doing? So he says that these people are picking up the thawab that other people have sent them. Thereafter he asked that person that, what are you doing? How come you are not picking up the thawab? He says that I do not need the thawab. He asked him why. He says the reason is because I have a grandson who is continuously sending me ithali thawab, who continuously prays the Quran, and he sends the thawab of that Quran which he recites to me. And he says that if you want to find my grandson, you will find him in this particular place at this very time. So he said that the Buzruk thought to himself that, you know what, I want to actually find out. He wanted to find out if this was really true. So he went to that very place, to the shop that his grandson was working. So this person, he's serving the customers, but whilst he's doing whatever his chores were at his job, continuously he is reading the Quran. Thereafter the Buzruk, he realized that this is the ithali thawab that this person is receiving. So this is what we need to do, ithali thawab, and it is very, very easy. You can send whatever page from the Quran, whatever you read from the Quran, you send it at ithali thawab. But we should also send 3 calls. Send 3 calls whenever you hear that this person has passed away, then send 3 calls, the thawab of 3 calls, and inshallah that person will receive it. So anyways, Surah Ikhlas. Now with regards to the names of the surah, the names of the surah wasn't revealed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, no. The names of the surah wasn't revealed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Only a few surahs of the Quran, Nabi Akram sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he named it himself. All the other surahs of the Quran were either named by the Sahaba radiyallahu ta'ala anhum or by the Tabi'een or those scholars that came after. For example, Surah Baqarah, it has approximately 17 names. And again, the surah that comes after, they have so many other names. For Surah An-Nisa, there is other names for Surah An-Nisa. For Surah Tawbah, there is other names. For Surah Al-Mu'min, Surah Al-Ghafir, there is 2 names. So the names of the surah were given after. Or Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam only gave a few names. Now the reason is because the Quran at that very time, it wasn't in the book format that we have today. I'll get to that actually. Now somebody may say that I could also name the surahs of the Quran. For example, Surah Al-Ikhlas, you could name it Surah Ahad or whatever you want to. So why don't we? Why don't you just name the surah of the Quran? If it was done by the scholars that came after, why don't we just start naming the surahs of the Quran? Number one, we don't have enough knowledge. And number two, even if you were to give Surah Ikhlas another name, you were to give Surah Al-Baqarah another name, no matter what name you give it, if you were to give it your own name and say to someone that, you know what, this surah, in the name that you have given it, nobody's going to understand what you're saying. Until you do not say Surah Al-Baqarah, until then nobody's going to understand what you're talking about. That's why it is pointless giving it your own name at this current moment in time. Anyways, with regards to the Quran, like I mentioned, it wasn't in the format that we have it today. You know how we got the first sipara, the second sipara, the third sipara, the fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, likewise. It wasn't in the form that we have today. So for example, some Sahaba radiyallahu ta'ala anhum, they had 15 verses of the Quran. Another Sahaba, he had 10 verses of the Quran. Another Sahaba, he had 30 verses of the Quran. And in that time, they used to write the verses of the Quran on, for example, a leaf of a tree. Or they would write it on a stone. Or they would write it on leather. Because they didn't have pen and papers, or they didn't have notebooks, they didn't have iPads, or they didn't have Samsung Notes, or whatever else. So they used to write it down on whatever they used to find. For example, even on bones, they used to write the verses of the Quran. Now the battle of Yamama happened after the demise of Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Now in the battle of Yamama, a lot of Sahaba radiyallahu ta'ala anhum were made shaheed. So many Sahaba radiyallahu ta'ala anhum became martyrs. And from amongst the Sahaba radiyallahu ta'ala anhum who had passed away, who were killed, were the Huffaz of the Quran. For this reason, Hazrat Umer radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, he approached Hazrat Abu Bakr radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. And he says that we need to compile the Quran into one book format. Why? Because it is very possible that we will lose a huge chunk of the Quran if we do not do so. Because of what has happened in Battle of Yamama, so many Huffaz have passed away. If we do not compile it into one book format, it is very possible that we will lose the Quran. So Hazrat Abu Bakr radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he took this advice of Hazrat Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu on board. And they now decided that we need to compile the Quran. Now remember, Hazrat Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he knew the Quran by heart. Now Hazrat Abu Bakr radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he told Zayd bin Thabit radiallahu ta'ala anhu that you are going to do this great work. Hazrat Zayd bin Thabit radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he says that why are we going to do that which Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam did not do? Now Hazrat Abu Bakr radiallahu ta'ala anhu continuously kept explaining that we need to do this, until Zayd bin Thabit radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he actually agreed that, you know what, we need to compile the Quran and we need to bring it into one format. So he says that when I was doing this great work, it was as if the burden of the mountain came onto my shoulders. He goes, it was easy for me to go and wash a mountain than actually compile the Quran, because this was a great task given to him. So Zayd bin Thabit radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he was also a hafiz of the Quran. And he was also from those people who were the Katibul Wahi. What does that mean? The Katibul Wahi are those people who used to write down the Wahi, the revelation, when it was revealed upon Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So he was from amongst the Katibul Wahi. Now Hazrat Zayd bin Thabit radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he makes an open announcement that whosoever has the ayat of the Quran are requested to come forward and bring the ayats which you have with you. So many Sahaba radiallahu ta'ala anhum, obviously they had ayats of the Quran. So they all came with the ayats of the Quran. So like I said, some had 10, some had 20, some had 30. Now there were strict conditions in order to accept the verses of the Quran. It wasn't that you bring the verse of the Quran and we're just going to take it and yes, we're going to compile it. No, there were strict conditions. One of the conditions that I can remember was that Zayd bin Thabit radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he said that we will not accept the verse of the Quran until you do not bring 2 witnesses with you that were there when you were writing the verse of the Quran when it was revealed upon Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And another condition was tawatur. Tawatur means that so many Sahaba radiallahu ta'ala anhum have also come with this verse of the Quran, the same verse of the Quran. For example, 15 other Sahaba radiallahu ta'ala anhum have come. 3, 4, 5 other Sahaba radiallahu ta'ala anhum have come with that very similar verse of the Quran, same verse of the Quran. Until then, it was not accepted. So likewise, Zayd bin Thabit radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he did the Jam'ul Quran, the compilation of the Quran. And again, the compilation of the Quran happened again in the time of Hazrat Uthman radiallahu ta'ala anhu for another reason. Because of the different dialects of the Quran. For example, the Banu Tamim, they used to change the lam. So they used to say, Laysa minam birri am siyamu fim safari. So there was ikhtilaf, there was conflict between the Sahaba and the Tabi'een. For this reason, in the time of Hazrat Uthman radiallahu ta'ala anhu, inshallah we'll go and we'll discuss with regards to the Jam'ul Quran in the time of Hazrat Uthman radiallahu ta'ala anhu. We don't have time right now. So inshallah we'll discuss that later. But the Jam'ul Quran took place 2 times. One in the time of Hazrat Abu Bakr radiallahu ta'ala anhu, and the second time in the time of Hazrat Uthman Ghani radiallahu ta'ala anhu. Now, starting with the verses of Surah Ikhlas, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He mentions قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ اللَّهُ الصَّمَدُ لَمْ يَلِدْ وَلَمْ يُولَدْ وَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُ كُفُوًا أَحَدٌ. Now, in order to understand Surah Ikhlas, there isn't much tafseer. And I don't want to go into the syntax, because when we were doing the tafsir of Surah Al-Falaq, when we were mentioning with regards to each word, it was literally flying over our heads. Because we are not acquainted with the Arabic language, so we find it really hard to understand the syntax of the Quran. So literally, very simply, in order to understand the tafsir of Surah Ikhlas, we need to understand the sabab-e-nuzul, the reason why Surah Ikhlas was revealed upon Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And the reason is, it comes in a narration that 2 people, they approached Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and they asked Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam that what is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made out of? Now remember that in the time of Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, when he was giving da'wat, Nabi Akram sallallahu alayhi wasallam was giving da'wat in such a time where people used to worship idols. Now these idols, they were made out of either copper, out of zinc, out of metal, gold, silver, or out of wood. So these people that approached Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, they had a similar concept with regards to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Hence why they asked the same question, that, O Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, what is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made out of? Another narration, it states that a few people, they came to Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam and they asked Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam with regards to the nasab of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the family lineage of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now nasab was very, very important to the Arabs. Not only did they know their own nasab, they also knew the nasab of so many other people who are in their tribe or other people from other tribes. Not only did they know the nasab, the family lineage of fellow human beings, they also knew the nasab of their animals. For example, the horse, they knew the family lineage of this horse right to the top. This is how important family lineage was to the Arabs. And so why again, they asked Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam that what is the nasab of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And obviously Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not have a family lineage. So anyways, for this reason Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He revealed the verses of Surah Ikhlas. First Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ, that O Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, tell them He, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is one. Now this verse of the Quran, firstly Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala could have just said قُلْ Allahu ahad. We don't need this huwa here. But the reason why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions huwa, and we see this a lot in the Arabic language, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has brought huwa to emphasize the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He is only one. قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ. And another reason what the Mufassirin they mention is huwa, it means He. Meaning those people who have come to ask the question, they are asking with regards to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So say, qul, say, He, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That person you are referring to, He, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is one. Allahu Samad. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is as-Samad. Now what is the meaning of as-Samad? It means that person who is not in need of anyone. And each and every person is in need of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Do you understand? We are in need of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not in need of us. So they asked a question. What was their question? Is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made out of gold, silver? Is He made out of wood? Is He made out of copper? What is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made out of? The answer to that question is here, Allahu Samad. Can anyone tell me how does this answer their question? How does this answer their question? When they ask that what is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made out of? Is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made out of wood? Is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made out of copper? By Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saying that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He is not in need of anyone, rather everyone else is in need of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How does this answer their question? I know it's a bit hard, it's a bit tricky, you'd have to put your mind to it, but is there anyone that could actually answer this question? Try think of it. Look, it's very, very simple. Now look at the work of the Mufassirin. It is great work to understand the tafsir of the Quran. We said Allah Ta'ala is not in need of anyone. So they ask, is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made out of copper, zinc? That means what? That means Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is in need of gold, silver, zinc and copper or metal or wood. But Allah Ta'ala, He says, no, the answer to your question is here. Allahu Samad. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not in need of anyone or anything. Rather, the whole creation and everything else is in need of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was in need of something, that means that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was made out of copper and zinc, that means Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is in need of this. But because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not in need of this, this answers your question. That Allahu Samad, He is not made out of copper, He is not made out of metal, He is not made out of wood, because He is not dependent on anything. Lam yalid wa lam yulad. Nor does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give birth, nor has Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala been given birth. Now, the Arabs in those times, they used to believe that the angels, they were the banatullah. The angels were the daughters of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Christians, they believe that Isa alayhi salatu wasalam is the son of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the son of God. But this is all false. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, Lam yalid. Nor has Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala been given birth, nor walam yulad, nor has Allah subhanahu wa nor does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give birth, nor has Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala been given birth. So when they ask what is the family lineage of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, huwa al-awwal wal-akhir. He is the very first and He is the very last. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has no family lineage. وَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُ كُفُوًا أَحَدٌ. وَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُ كُفُوًا أَحَدٌ. Now again the structure of this sentence. The subject has come after. Now the sentence, the end of the sentence, which was supposed to come at the end, hasn't come at the end. But it has come forward and the actual subject has come at the end. Now again, this is for emphasis. وَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُ كُفُوًا أَحَدٌ. And there is no one who is parallel, there is no one who is like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There is no one who can compare themselves with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. لَيْسَ كَمِثْلِهِ شَيْءٍ. There is nothing, there is no one who can compare themselves with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He is unparalleled. No one can beat Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There is nothing like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُ كُفُوًا أَحَدٌ. Now this is the verses of Surah Ikhlas. Now again we mentioned that one of the reasons a person he had love for Surah Ikhlas, Nabi Akram sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he said that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves you. It comes in another narration that once another person, he would continuously praise Surah Ikhlas, and Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam was told with regards to this. And again, Nabi Akram sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he asked the question that why do you do this? He said, because I love this surah. Nabi Akram sallallahu alayhi wasallam says that because of your love for this surah, you will enter into Jannah. Hazrat Sa'id bin Musayyib radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, he narrates that once Nabi Akram sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he said that whosoever recites Surah Ikhlas 10 times, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will build for that person a palace in Jannah. You pray it 20 times, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will build for you another palace in Jannah. So 2 palaces. You pray it 30 times, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will build for you 3 palaces in Jannah. So Hazrat Umer radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, who was sat there, Hazrat Umer radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, he says that, O Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, we're going to continuously pray it 10 times. Even if that means we pray 100 times, we're going to pray it so many times. Nabi Akram sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says, no matter how many times you pray Surah Ikhlas, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give you accordingly. Allah ta'ala ke khazane mein koi kami nahi hai. There is no limit in the treasures of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. No matter how many times you will pray it, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give you accordingly. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us the true understanding of these verses of the Quran. Firstly, we are these verses of the Quran, it is about the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We prove Qul huwallahu ahad, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is one. He is not in need of anyone. Everyone is dependent upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Lam yalid wa lam yulad. Nor does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give birth, nor has Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala been given birth. Wa lam yakul lahu kufuwan ahad. And no one is parallel, no one is like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us the true understanding. Subhanallah wa bihamdihi, subhanakallah wa bihamdihi, nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.
أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله هيا على الصلاة هيا على الصلاة هيا على الفلاح هيا على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله هيا على الصلاة هيا على الصلاة هيا على الفلاح هيا على الفلاح قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
Safed was فرماد please straighten the rows. الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين